Pich-Aguilera son 25 yıldır üzerinde çalışmış oldukları projelerdeki sürdürülebilir özellikleriyle ilgili olarak genel bilgiler verecek. Pich-Aguilera'yı sahneye davet ediyorum.
Good night. Thank you to be here. Nice to be here to share our ideas. I would like to pass to the previous one. That's it. I think that we should think about that, in fact, nature is our friend, not our enemy. And we should, as architects and members of all the building sector, we should try to think that we should try to build with nature, not against it. Sometimes we feel, when we look forwards, we can feel that if we were using architecture in order to defend ourselves from nature, and this is a little bit silly, and that's what I would like to demonstrate tonight. We are wasting energy, we are wasting materials, we are wasting water, we are wasting in terms of CO2 emission to the atmosphere. So we are wasting our territory and our resources. That's how we are developing, that's how we have been building since now. But we all have a dream of a new possibility of enjoying nature, of living in nature. And architects and all members of the building sector, I think that our profession is basically to bring up the dreams of our society, and our dreams as part of society, make these dreams become truth. And the buildings we build are not an objective in themselves, but these are instruments in order to change reality and to make that reality seems a little bit more of what we think it should be. So our project is not on buildings, but our project is about reality. We have a project of the world, and we use architecture and building in order to become truth. But of course, to do so, we should try to change a lot of things that are happening in our minds. And the first thing, and I see a lot of young people in the audience, but even the old ones, we have been taught in universities, in schools, let's say with a romantic idea, which is that architecture is dealing with forms, that provokes problems, climatical and energetical problems, that we must solve with machines that are very efficient and that are not part of the architecture and the forms. And this is simply not truth. Architects and engineers are different faces of the same coin. Architecture should be, in fact, a machine of producing its inside climate. And it will be nice and aesthetic because the form it's the form to do so. And as far as it is the form, the form of a dream, we will feel this form, it will be nice. And in the other hand, engineers think that the form is not a problem. We can continue doing silly forms because someday they will be able to invent a machine without any kind of energy consumption. So, in reality, there isn't a problem. So, these two mentalities that are facing their backs should look to themselves and look to nature, to the extremely sophisticated technology of nature itself. If you see this construction of some Australian ants that is able to keep constantly 16 degrees of temperature inside, when outside in the same day you have plus 40 degrees and minus 10, just with thermal mass, porosity, wind flow, inertia of material, nothing else. We can say this is the perfect architecture, the perfect form, and the perfect machine, on the other hand. I would like to show you some building projects we are working in this time that try to, in our way, in our capacity, are trying to make reality these ideas. Of course, ideas are always go farther than our capacity of doing physical things. But the important is, where are the ideas? Which are the references? Because someday, if you keep on working, you'll be in the same step of the ideas. Of course, at that time, ideas will be much far away. This is a building, a project we are starting in this moment. We are working on it in this moment. This is a research center beside the harbor of Barcelona, in the middle of an industrial area. This building is, let's say, should be a very efficient infrastructure in order to produce this function of research, and also a place where nature can settle, light, and in the middle of this industrial area. And also it's a pattern of growing of the building inside the plot. This is our machine that tried to have some sort of facing to the industrial area and to make it a little bit more a city and not nowhere land. This is a view of the entrance to the building. So you see that the building is with some legs. You can have a garden underneath and look through it to the sea and to the port. And in the middle of the building, the plants and the light is coming through. And itself, this infrastructure is, I'm not going to enter in details, but this infrastructure is designed in terms of producing its own climate in wintertime and in summertime, taking account of the inertia of the materials, the sun, the shade, and so on. So this is, let's say, a machine, an architecture, it should be nice as far as it is efficient itself, and it should contribute also, as far as it can, to the city that is beneath it. This is a project we finished recently, about 1 year ago, in the south of Barcelona. This is a hospital, quite a big building. I'm not going to talk you on the details about all of that, but the first thing is that it's a very big building, a hospital. You have some sort of respect to big buildings and to hospitals, but we try not to impose a volume here, but to try to deal with proportion and with direction that make that this building is building also part of the city and the growth of the city. This is some photographs while it was being finished. But I wanted to talk to you to this part of the building, which is the lobby, and also a street, covered street, 350 meters long. That is, let's say, a lobby and a street of a city. And by the design by the form of the design, we were able to not to install any kind of machine, of equipment in this part, and to guarantee that inside this space would be always between 21 and 28 degrees centigrade in any condition of temperature outside, just by the shape of the cover, like a chimney that evacuates hot air, just opening here and upstairs, also with a fan, because also of the form and of the proportion, so as that the sun doesn't enter in summertime and arrives to the inside in wintertime. And of course, with the systems of computing that give us information at the early steps of the project in order to take decisions in the form itself. It's not testing what happens when the project is done. It's a matter of testing what's happening in order to take decisions on the project. So this is one image of this long corridor once it was built. You see also all these elements. We have ventilated facade with very deep isolation, and then we have a steel, perforated steel sheet in order that this wall here inside can absorb the sound that would be very noisy in this pedestrian street. So we are looking about what's the urban comfort. Comfort is not only a matter of intimacy, it's not a matter of inner space, but is beside all a matter of public space, of the city itself. You see, all the components of the building has been industrialized, so has been produced on factory and then assembled on site. And these are some gardens that are in the top of the building. So these two plants are the rooms for the people that is ill and is sleeping in the hospital. So he has the reference of this new ground floor, which is in the roof of the building itself. But the reference of this ground floor makes that the people that is leaving the hospital has the sensation of living in a more domestic place, like some sort of small piazza in a small town. And this is an image of the first under the ground, that with these patios we can have the sunlight and we can feel it as if it was the ground floor. So, and we're saving then artificial light. The second concept I would like to talk about is Miguel Angel talked a little bit about that before me, is the idea of industrialization. Let's say if we think of our buildings as components that can be produced on factory and then assembled on site, the first thing that we are thinking is that territory, the plot, the land, has a value for itself, not as a place in order to have a building on it, but something which is valuable, that in a period of time it will host some components making a building, but after some time, some years maybe, these components will be recycled, will be disassembled and non-destroyed. And this place will have its own entity again in order to do whatever we want. I'm talking about industrialization more than prefabrication. Because prefabrication, the concept, is dealing with something that is already done, and we as technicians, we can choose. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking really about industrialization. That means that the power, the capacity of industry, of doing things he already do, but also to do things, new things, that it hasn't been done since now. So the capacity of the industry to work for a project or for a family of projects in order to do different things, not just better things, but different things. Today, society is asking us to do things we do not know how to do. They are not asking us to do things a little bit better, or they are not asking us to do things much better. They are asking us to do things we do not know how to do, that we didn't do before. How to do a building without any kind of energy. How to do a building with zero emission. How to make a building that we can disassemble after 30 years. So these are things that are not based on experience. These are things that are based on knowledge. So that's why you young people here, that maybe 30 years ago, the experience was the most important value in society, in architecture. It won't be like this anymore. The most important things in the future is the capacity of doing new things, answering to the questions that society is putting us, not our own questions, but questions of society. This is a school we built in Barcelona in a very dense plot. You see here as the structure like steel frames welded and assembled in a dry way on site. And then here you see that there are some pre-stressed slabs, concrete slabs, that are just put it on the steel frames. And then you see the facades, how they are welded and put in concrete facades. And how afterwards the concrete, the face is to the inside, and outside where we are putting the isolation. And finally, polymer concrete, very thin, in order to have ventilation in the outside of the isolation. You see, if we have the concrete to the inside facade for a school, it's interesting because it's a strong material, and afterwards because we have the thermal inertia giving to the inside. That means that you reach that constant temperature to the inside during the whole day. So it's a good thing for a place where there are a lot of people and a lot of changes along the day. And finally, the building, once it's built, and these are let's say these patios giving to the west facade, which is very hot facade in Barcelona. So we have big windows in order to have view and sun, but we have these louvers outside that keep away the sun from getting inside. And here I would like to, to talk to you of the last concept. And I will call it atmosphere. No, we all of us are part of the first generation that we are aware that we have seen photographs of our planet taken from outside of it. And we know that our planet itself, it has an atmosphere. It has some sort of membrane. Down this membrane, we live. We can live. Without this membrane, we wouldn't be able to live. And there are some scientifics, James Lovelock, Lynn Margulis, that took part of the NASA programs that settled the first principles of what we call scientist ecology of nowadays. And they discovered, they know, that biosphere is not something previous to life. Biosphere is itself a construction of life. Previous to the life, our planet was just a mineral ball running very fast through the universe. And it was life with very schematic and very basic forms at the beginning that has been building all the biosphere in order to be able to develop in terms of major complexity. And that's architecture itself. That's what's architecture. Something built in order to develop forms of life of major capacity. So what we know nowadays is that previous architecture, which is atmosphere, in every architecture, every building we are doing inside this previous one should be complementary and not against it. And what we are doing is, because of building our buildings, we are destroying atmosphere in terms of CO2 emission. If we do not have atmosphere in good properties, no architecture has any kind of sense. So we should understand our work as builder and as architects as a contribution of life to make a better biosphere, as a contribution of keep on building biosphere, not destroying it. This is a building we finished some time ago. It is a call center for the telephone company of Spain in Toledo. And it's a building that has been designed in terms of infrastructure, efficient infrastructure, that finally has, let's say, an atmosphere or a fold that allows this infrastructure to be used in terms of temperature inside. We have two vertical nucleus where all the installations and elevators and so on. Here we have place of the call center. We have 17 meters from side to side. This is the north part of the call center. This is the north facade, south facade, which is some offices for the management of the call center. And here we have the south facade, which is a place to rest. This is a cross-section of the call center hall. You see the people is working in these breaches, in contact with all this air, let's say, and here we have, let's say, this artificial atmosphere that close this space. And this is in the north part of the building where the offices are done, when we need more closed elements. And this is air chamber, plenty of humidity and shade that will be used as a refreshment of the air for the rest of the building. And in this time it was the task program that allowed us to test our idea in the early stages and make possible that we take decisions of the project on the form of the project in order to improve the behavior of the speed of the air and so on. I must say that, of course, computing programs are not before the mind of the people. We architects, technicians, we have intuitions, and the intuition, the ideas, is things that start all the process. And the programs and computers are instruments in order to test how good are our ideas. Ideas are always good, but the fact is we must test if they are good enough in order to continue with this kind of ideas. So if we could put computer before the ideas, everything stops finally. Ideas are the beginning, not the instrument. And these are two images of how this architecture machine is working in wintertime and in summertime, taking account of the airflow, of the radiation of the sun, the water, the ground floor, etc. And these are some images how the components of the building are being assembled in a very fast way, each one in its typology. And some images of the building when it has been done. You see, each facade is different because what's happening inside the building is different, and because of the conditions of the sun and temperature are different too. All the pieces of the building has been produced on factory and then assembled in a dry way on site. You see, inside, people is working, and here from the entrance you cannot see the people, but you can see the void and the volume. And let's say that we wanted and we tried that the materials that arrive to the building site were their own appearance. So they are not materials that are inside and materials that are outside, maybe some, but as far as we can, we try that the material is its own appearance. And that makes that we can save a lot of material, and also that we can put appearance of some kind of materials that were usually are not seen. So we try to make things good, well, in the first time. If you make a brick and you know that this brick will have another material upon it, you will make a bad job, because you know somebody else will fold it afterwards. If you say that this brick is going to be seen finally, your effort will be not into make a brick with a very high quality as a material, but also to make a wall made of bricks in a high quality too, because it is the appearance of the building. And also the installations and the elements that take part of the building are part also of the architecture. So as far as we look at they are seen, they are open to the view of the people. And this is renovation of industrial building we made in Barcelona. This is a collaboration with URSA precisely. It was an old, let's say, an old building, industrial building that we had to renew. We had to build here an office block. So the first decision was to recycle the structure, the concrete structure, which was a good structure, steel, and to find a system to fold this structure in order to represent and in order also to take part, to be part of the new use of the building. So the system is two polycarbonate, two folds of polycarbonate with some louvers downstairs and upstairs that allows the air come through, so it avoids that the sun and the heat gets inside and hits the inside. So you reduce the glass window to what people is able to look outside, but you can also clean from the inside. And in the top of the roof, we have what we call a green roof that is able to store rainwater. We try to calculate the parameters of all these elements to prove that this is something that is going to have a good behavior in these conditions. And that's some phases of the work. Here you have in the walls that have not polycarbonate in the inside facade, we have isolation with an aluminum sheet that is able to keep out the dust and also to reflect the sun and to give this kind of transparency appearance. So that's the building, what it has been done. It has the idea, let's say, a transparency as a glass, a frozen element. And once it's getting dark outside, we have the light from the inside going to the outside, and you see the colors that has been plotted for the inside polycarbonate are expressing themselves to the outside. So the building changes from day to night. And here we have the system of this green roof that is able to store water with concrete slab, porous slab, with insulation, with a geotextile, which is always in the water, in the rainwater, and then some ground sand in the top and plants. And these are some monitoring of the temperature in the concrete slab. You see, you have the temperature, the changing of the temperature in the slab, in the inner facade of the slab, is the same that you would have, let's say, in a cave that is some meters under the floor, which is a constant temperature. And then you have upstairs a new ground floor, a new natural territory in the middle of the dense cities. So we can store rainwater, we can isolate the flat that is underneath, we can produce a garden and so plants that filter the CO2 in the pollution of the center of the cities, and we can produce unifamiliar typologies that nowadays must go very far away from the center of the cities and then take the car in order to come to the center each day, every day. And I would like to end with this project. It's in the city of Lérida, in the north of Catalonia. And this is the first phase of a renewal of all this equipment, which is an ancient equipment for military services. And the town hall wanted to build here a new research center for research in terms of agricultural technologies, because Lérida is a place where agriculture is very present. And we propose to the town hall not to destroy these buildings, but to recycle them and into the new function. And the fact is that this first decision of architecture, the most ecological one that we could have taken, was possible because maybe 70 years ago, when this building was built, somebody, some architect, somebody was able to think of something that goes beyond the direct function. The direct function was simply an equipment for sleeping for the soldiers. This could have been done in much more a simple way. But he left this kind of patios, this kind of porous building that allowed us. This was what we found when we arrived. 3 buildings, one upon another. And what we propose is to connect these 3 buildings with a green roof taken directly of the industry of agriculture, and make of this only one building connected by this patio. That's this kind of green roof, and in the top of the building to make a green garden storing water, and to use this new ground floor as part of the pedestrian use of the building. This is physically our green roof that had to be recycled of a Dutch industrial plot, and then disassembled and assembled again in the top of our patios in Lérida. So what we were doing is to translate knowledge and technology of the industry of agriculture into the industry of building sector and of architecture. And this is a tool we made with different programs in order to know basically which were the gains of different decisions we could take at that moment, and try to put numbers in terms of economy, and to see which were the best decisions in terms of economy and energy at that time. And that's how this system is working. In wintertime, we have maybe 0 degrees outside, very cold, and the effect of green roof is going to make this inside hotter and hotter. The massive walls giving to the patio, in this case without isolation, they are going to store the heat during the day and let it go during the night. So it won't be, when you start the beginning of when the sun goes out, it's a little bit hot again, still. But outside we are isolating from the outside facade and we are shading it. And in summertime, we are going to open this green roof. We are going to open some louvers downstairs. There are some plants that are going to shade. We have some shading here downstairs and some water, spreading water, so as the air, very hot and very dry from the outside, can have a lower temperature because of evaporation. We can manage in wintertime and in summertime, even 9 degrees in the top of the outside temperature from the inside temperature. And this is the water cycle. We have all the rainwater that comes out in this building will be stored in the roof or in some tanks downstairs underneath. And these are some images when the building just finished. We tried to, of course, this was a place, a very sad place, a very, let's say, a very great place, because here it was at that time a military place. So we tried to. It was not a matter of restoration in this case. We were not asked to restore some past, splendorous past of that building. We were asked to recycle it material without taking out of the plot as a territory, but giving to this new building a new memory and a new life. So we tried to play with colors and we tried to play with different, let's say, to make that old building smile again. And these are some images. When it was finished, now it's green, all that. So this is the pedestrian plot all around the top of the building, when you can see the view from the very wide view to the outside. And that's all. I would like to finish with this image that I like very much. And it's an image about that, I don't know, things can happen, or dreams can be true. And this is an image of the first demonstration flight that the Wright brothers did in Europe the next year, in 1906. Next year they fly for the first time in the United States. And you know, at that time, society had the dream to fly. They need to fly, and they were mentally, culturally prepared in order to fly. And there were, at that time, a lot of groups of people trying to find the technology in order to be able to fly. And the Wright brothers were not the best qualified in terms of knowledge, in terms of economical power, in terms of political connections. But their profession was to build bicycles. And they understood since the beginning that flying was not a matter of force, was not a matter of power, but it was a matter of balance. And what they had to design is an element that was finding balance between the force of the man riding it and the forces of nature, sun, wind, earth, giving to that. And they fly. They were the first ones to give up the door to fly. And nowadays, I feel that architecture, sustainable architecture, let's say sustainable development, is also dealing with balance and not with force. With balance of different natural forces that converge in our architecture. So we must, each time, we must analyze what's happening in terms of nature, in terms of forces, in this precisely place, in this precisely climate, and to design our architecture as an engine that is looking for balance in that situation. So architecture is different, is diverse, is new each time, because each time everything changes. So I don't have anything else to say. If there's any question, I guess that you can do it now. Thank you very much.
Peak Architects